the black-haired man introduces a small, white-haired boy named Rubian. A mischievous devil sibling causes a loud boom during dinner, startling the entire household. The narrator resolves to protect his sibling as a cool big brother should, despite the youngest's suspicious behavior. In a quiet moment, the white-haired child continues to write in the glowing, magical book. Diary entries mention brother Liam and a shared dream of becoming knights with new, shiny swords. Amidst news of mother's return, a warning is left for Rubian to stop snooping in the diary. Rubian complains aloud about being written about, demanding tighter security for the private record. With a quick click sounding, the child locks the book and slips away through the door. A playful drawing depicts the family's youngest, but a surprising secret is about to be revealed. The narrative drops a major bombshell. The beloved youngest sibling was actually a girl all along. On a desolate, corpse-strewn battlefield, a black-haired man in military uniform leads his horse through the ruin. Sensing a sudden movement, the soldier draws his sword and scans the grim surroundings for threats. He investigates a strange noise near a fallen soldier who has been riddled with sharp arrows. The soldier doubts any living person remains in this wasteland until a sudden sound catches his attention. He discovers a small, white-haired child huddled among the dead and levels his blade at the survivor. Terrified, the blue-eyed child stares at the sharp sword tip held inches from their throat. Looking closer at the tiny, trembling survivor, the soldier's stern expression softens into one of genuine surprise. He identifies himself as an imperial soldier, promising the frightened child that he will not harm them. Noticing the child's small pouch, he gently asks if they were scavenging for food among the debris. A calloused hand reaches out, offering a gesture of safety and hope amidst the surrounding carnage. The man offers his hand to the child, inviting the lone survivor to follow him away. The child gazes up in pure awe, eyes wide as they take in their rescuer's kind face. With a simple confirmation, the man seals their new bond in the middle of the wasteland. He lifts the child into his arms, declaring that the horror of the war is finally over. The soldier holds the child close, apologizing sincerely for not having any cookies to offer them. As they walk toward the horse, he marvels at how incredibly light the child feels in his arms. Surrounded by a dreamlike glow, the child blushes and admits they were startled by this sudden rescue. The man looks away, slightly flustered by the child's remarkably large and sparkling blue eyes. He gently inquires about the child's family, unaware of the deep tragedy they have likely endured. The child clings tightly to his tunic, a silent plea for protection that catches the man off guard. He feels a wave of pity for the hardships this little one must have faced alone. Standing by his horse, he considers the difficulties of moving a child across the closed kingdom's borders. They ride away together, leaving the scorched earth behind as they travel toward a new destination. Under a crescent moon, they set up camp, finding a moment of peace beside a crackling fire. The man watches the child, noting their unusual face and remarkably formal way of speaking. While wrapped in the man's cloak, the child spots a familiar emblem, triggering a sudden, sharp realization. A shockwave of memory hits the child as they realize their surroundings match a very specific story. A vision of a hero before a burning palace confirms the man's identity as someone they sought. The child realizes they have reincarnated as an extra in the novel The Sword Planted Upon Ruins. Illustrations recount the novel's war against monsters and the legendary hero who led humanity to victory. The child identifies their savior as the legendary protagonist of the story, a man named Leviathan Zebert. In the original tale, Leviathan used his incredible strength to slay the Black Mage and end the war. However, a dark fate looms. The child remembers that Leviathan is destined to die a sudden death, Horrified by this knowledge, the child stares at the man who is currently their only hope. The story doesn't end there, as the novel's second part promises an even more devastating global conflict. Without the hero to intervene, a resurrected black mage will plunge the entire continent back into chaos. To survive this grim future, the child resolves to prevent the black mage's resurrection at any cost. Driven by this new purpose, the child reaches out to accept the food the hero offers. With a dazzling, hopeful smile, the child asks if Leviathan needs a youngest family member at home. Leviathan Zebert shakes his head as the white-haired child throws a comical, noisy fit beneath him. Beside the campfire, the child rolls on the ground, stubbornly refusing the shelter and demanding a family instead. Leviathan watches the child's dusty floor-cleaning tantrum, dryly asking what they mean by wanting to be the youngest. As they rest, the child reflects on finally meeting the legendary hero after surviving the horrors of the battlefield. Within a symbolic vision of death, the child worries about the gaps in their memory regarding the novel's plot. Glowing magic circles manifest beneath small hands, sparking with the raw power of a desperate battlefield spell. Mages unleash a barrage of light and lightning, ordered to collapse the cliff and stall the advancing enemy forces. Narration reveals the child's true past as a forced mage soldier dragged into war by the Demon King's command. A memory of the child on the battlefield resurfaces, their red eyes sharp and alert amidst the swirling chaos. Proud banners of different armies flutter in the wind, representing the various factions entangled in the great conflict. After a year of surviving near-death encounters, the child discovers a small, dark monster lurking amidst the war's ruin. A terrifying dragon monster breathes fire upon the troops as the hooded child scrambles to escape the carnage. After evading the Demon King's pursuers, the child finally reaches Leviathan, determined to save the man from his fate. Leviathan calls out to the kid, unaware of the child's secret identity or the hero's deep hatred for mages. The child feels the crushing weight of their many secrets while Leviathan watches them with an increasingly suspicious gaze. Leviathan playfully pinches the child's cheek, asking if they are sulking over his initial rejection of their family proposal. While their cheek is squeezed, the child wonders why a reincarnated grown man is being treated like a pouting toddler. Confused by the child's strange wording, Leviathan holds their hand and questions why they referred to themselves that way. The child looks away, insisting that while they are a fugitive deserter, there is no need to change their gender. Under the crescent moon, Leviathan tells the chattering child to stop sulking and finally get some much-needed sleep. As they ride, Leviathan gently covers the child's eyes, drawing his sword to deal with a sudden, lurking threat. With the child's vision obscured for protection, Leviathan delivers a powerful, decisive blow to the encroaching black monster. Splattered with purple monster blood, Leviathan asks if they were scared, while the child reacts with pure, disgusted horror. The child wipes at the foul-smelling blood, complaining loudly that the stench of the monster will never come off. Leviathan checks the child's head for injuries, while the child winces and protests that the rough handling actually hurts. While being inspected, the child considers using moonflower herbs to effectively draw out the stubborn, dark monster blood. Leviathan stares at the small survivor, noting with intense curiosity that the child hasn't shed a single tear yet. The child realizes their lack of tears isn't behaving like a normal kid, fearing their composed reaction is suspicious. A memory of the hero's legendary, oppressive aura explains why most children usually burst into tears upon seeing him. Riding together, the child reflects on their stoic nature, having rarely cried in either their past or present life. A flashback reveals a lonely girl watching her parents argue, learning early that solving problems is better than weeping. The child explains that crying only results in being called noisy, leaving the hardened soldier momentarily stunned into silence. The horse pauses in the forest as a voice echoes, demanding to know who would say such a thing. When Leviathan asks who told them crying was a nuisance, the child matter-of-factly reveals it was their own mother. Surprised by the answer, Leviathan reaches out and gently pokes the child's nose, catching them off guard with the gesture. A playful scuffle ensues on horseback, as Leviathan's rough affection leaves the child flailing and confused by his behavior. Surrounded by white lilies, Leviathan looks down at his small companion with a gaze that has softened considerably. He begins to carefully bandage the child's head, acknowledging the hardship they've endured throughout the brutal war. Trivial chatter and harmless jokes fill the air as squirrels watch the unlikely pair travel through the quiet woods. Their journey continues through sun-drenched meadows, marked by the simple, peaceful conversations that have begun to bridge their gap. Leviathan smiles warmly, reassuring the child that all the monsters are finally dead and the world is safe again. Overwhelmed with relief, the child beams a wide, joyful smile, basking in the rare moment of genuine, peaceful happiness. A massive sword stands as a monument in the wasteland, a silent testament to the peace won through 10 years of war. Leviathan looks ahead with a stoic expression, his sharp features illuminated by the soft light of the surrounding flowers. The child reaches out to pat his hand, offering a sincere thank you for his incredible sacrifice on the battlefield. Looking up with sparkling blue eyes, the child expresses their deep gratitude for the peace the hero has brought them. With a hopeful heart, the child makes another playful pitch to be adopted into the hero's family as his youngest. At the shelter, Leviathan waves a final, teasing goodbye, leaving the child behind with a kind-hearted local woman. Horrified by the separation, the child screams that the world will end if the hero leaves them alone there. The brown-haired woman offers a warm smile and a plate of food, welcoming the hungry child into her care. The woman asks if the white-haired child is cute, while the child's stomach growls loudly with hunger. A small character head icon appears as the director is called away to check on something. The child stares in horror at a plate of Apocalypse Day pasta featuring tiny, doomed bread figures. A sudden, sharp clatter rings out as a child's scream, "Kia!" interrupts the strange meal. Fuming over Leviathan's abandonment, the child sits alone while other orphans watch their temper tantrum. A wave of dizziness hits the child, making them wonder if they got too angry for their own good. Narrative text explains the capital's lack of magic, making simple existence exhausting for a hidden wizard. Slumped in despair, the child is interrupted by a blonde boy asking if they are all right. A close-up reveals the blonde boy's striking blue eyes and his gentle, concerned expression toward the child. The child tries to ignore the boy's kindness while background orphans play at being legendary heroes. Focused on preventing the world's end, the child pokes at their odd meal with a silver fork. Determined to save Leviathan from his fate, the child clutches a small toy knight and horse tightly. While hiding their secret identity, the child watches a chaotic, noisy scuffle break out between the other children. Clenching their fist, the child feels the sting of Leviathan's cold abandonment amidst a comical, loud crash. A fallen toy knight marks the moment a child wails "Wah!" about the hero's tragic end. The child groans and mumbles incoherently while the blonde boy watches their strange behavior with amusement. The blonde boy gives a soft, knowing smile, seemingly charmed by the child's peculiar and intense nature. A gentle hand reaches out to pat the blonde boy's hair, offering a moment of quiet comfort. The blonde boy accepts the child's concern, gently stroking their head while the child looks on in surprise. Amidst playful sounds, the woman returns to find the unlikely pair has already finished their meal. The woman offers a kind gesture, leaving the white-haired child flustered and confused by the sudden attention. Shocked by the mention of a magic measurement, the child panics, fearing their secret identity is doomed. High on a grassy hill, Leviathan stands with the emperor and several servants under a clear blue sky. The blonde emperor admires the palace view, but Leviathan bluntly tells him to get to the point. A formal introduction identifies the blonde man as Daitrian Bamelon, the emperor of the Bamelon Empire. A bird chirps as the emperor mentions a request to help track down a runaway wizard. Floating feathers and bright light fill the air as the two powerful men face each other. Leviathan dismisses the search, assuming the wizard perished, and asks if he must handle the cleanup. Noticing his terrified servants, the emperor asks Leviathan to channel his overwhelming, ominous energy elsewhere. Walking together, the emperor questions Leviathan's harshness regarding the incident involving the old runaway wizard. Birds scatter in terror as Leviathan's dark, silhouetted form radiates a chilling and absolute finality. Frightened by the hero's intensity, the emperor's servants tremble and are quickly dismissed for their safety. Leviathan agrees to handle the wizard, prompting a playful, mocking comment about his presumption from the emperor. As they ride away, the emperor mentions an interesting sight reported by a marquis entering the palace. The emperor wears a mysterious smile, seemingly keeping a secret about the white-haired child's current whereabouts. Leviathan remains stoic, his sharp features and purple eyes revealing nothing of his inner suspicions. Snow falls on a quiet northern forest, highlighting the harsh environment the emperor deems unfit for children. A horse carries its rider through the city as narration describes the monster-infested dangers of the north. The white-haired child smiles brilliantly while hugging a horse, surrounded by a magical, flowery glow. Leviathan reflects on his duty, deciding he must say a brief goodbye before leaving for the north. Distant chatter reveals a shocking rumor about a thief breaking into the orphanage and hurting children. Leviathan's expression hardens as he listens to the news, his suspicion clearly and dangerously piqued. An oppressive, dark texture fills the scene, reflecting a shift toward a tense and grim atmosphere. Flashbacks show a magical thief being thwarted while the child huddles on the ground in total exhaustion. Gasping for breath, the child laments how quickly their magic drains in this magic-poor country. The child recounts accidentally using magic to stop a robber and realizes they must escape immediately. Leaning against a stone wall, the child resolves to find Leviathan and explain their difficult situation. Rain begins to pour as the child's collapse is discovered by panicked voices in the street. Shivering in the downpour, the child's heart sinks as they dread the possibility of being rejected again. Leviathan walks away, his back turned as he ponders the lonely weight of being needed by no one. Rubian struggles with sudden dizziness, desperately trying to push past his gloomy thoughts as he continues his difficult journey. Exhausted and shivering, Rubian collapses in the rainy alleyway. Pleading for just a moment of rest before moving again. Outside the temporary barracks, rain pours down as the knights prepare for their next move under a gray sky. Leon reports that Rubian is safe, having only collapsed from exhaustion, and will likely wake up very soon. Within the dark wreckage, Leviathan's gaze is sharp and commanding as he orders his men to find the boy. Finding the small child lying in the mud, Leviathan gently scoops him up, shielding him from the relentless downpour. Leon observes the hero's visible concern, surprised to see the stoic man so shaken by a mere orphan's plight. Plans are made to secure a proper carriage for Rubian as the group prepares to return to the territory. Rubian wakes with a start, a sudden shock registered in his wide blue eyes as he takes in his surroundings. Sitting nearby, Leviathan reassures the startled child that they are safe within the barracks and should try to relax. Leviathan provides food and medicine, insisting Rubian rest despite the child's protests that he feels perfectly fine now. Relieved his secret remained hidden when his clothes were changed, Rubian reacts with surprise as Leviathan checks his temperature. Leviathan notes the fever has broken, while the flustered child tries to pull away from his gentle, large hand. Rubian looks up with sparkling eyes as the hero's hand lingers, caught in a moment of quiet, unexpected tenderness. Leviathan explains he rushed to find Rubian after hearing of the robbery, admitting his genuine shock at the child's disappearance. With a soft chomp, Rubian happily eats the food being fed to him, basking in the hero's rare care. Rubian is stunned by the hero's words, his wide-eyed expression questioning if the man is actually being serious right now. A playful moment ensues as Leviathan tells the child to chew properly, while Rubian eagerly gulps down his meal. Leviathan expresses his desire for Rubian to live safely now that the world has finally found a moment of peace. A peaceful vision of Rubian watering a garden in a raincoat illustrates the quiet life the hero wants for him. Rubian insists that his greatest peace is found by the hero's side, regardless of any hardship they might face. Looking up with a determined and slightly blushing face, the white-haired child reaffirms their choice to stay together. Leviathan offers a rare, soft smile, clearly moved by the child's unwavering loyalty and heartfelt declaration of attachment. As dawn breaks over the camp, the morning light filters through the trees, signaling the start of a new chapter. Rubian flails and protests loudly as Leviathan carries him, insisting he is healthy and doesn't need to be coddled. Cradled comfortably in the hero's arms, Rubian is told to settle in as they prepare for the journey ahead. At the desk, Leviathan signs official documents, legally guaranteeing Rubian's status and safety under the protection of Lord Siebert. Rubian considers that guardianship might be even better than adoption, fitting perfectly with his secret plans for the future. A flashback to Rubian's past life reveals a lonely 17-year-old girl standing with a suitcase, feeling lost and independent. Now better prepared, Rubian resolves to be thorough before eventually setting out on his own terms this time. A cheerful, chaotic moment unfolds as Leviathan laughs and tickles the boy while helping him get dressed for travel. Rubian waves a happy goodbye to the official, receiving a warm wish for happiness as they leave the office. Sunlight bathes the grand architecture of the palace as the pair begins their departure from the capital city's heart. Walking together, Leviathan tells Rubian that the choice to stay in the north ultimately belongs to the child alone. With a serious expression, Leviathan advises Rubian to experience the northern life firsthand before making any permanent decisions. With a playful giggle, Rubian reacts as Leviathan pokes his nose, teasing him about acting like an imprinted baby bird. Leviathan officially welcomes the child into the family, designating the white-haired boy as the new youngest member of Siebert. The scene shifts to the frozen, snow-covered landscape of the northern Siebert ducal territory, where winter reigns supreme. In a dark, cold throne room, a powerful man asks if something has been brought back to the north. The bearded man scoffs at the news, dismissing his son's actions as total nonsense while leaning on his hand. An official nervously presents a document asking for guidance on how to handle the sudden arrival of the new child. A hand rests firmly on the desk, emphasizing the tense atmosphere as the master of the house considers his options. With a fierce, toothy grin, the old man declares they must test if the boy is truly qualified for northern life. A sudden, colorful splash hits the grass as Rubian lets out a pained gawk from intense carriage sickness. Leviathan pats Rubian's back as he retches, while the child apologizes for the mess between fits of nausea. Weak and dizzy, Rubian takes a canteen and rinses his mouth out with water offered by the concerned hero. Rubian laments his terrible motion sickness, wondering if his body has become significantly weaker during his time away. Noticing the child's suffering, Leviathan suggests they abandon the carriage and ride on horseback together to finish the trip. Leon approaches the pair as they prepare to mount the horse, the carriage left behind in the sun-drenched woods. Leon looks ahead with a focused, serious gaze as his name is called from off-screen. The white-haired child observes Leon, noting the blue-haired knight's legendary reputation as a loyal retainer in the original story. Noticing Leon's stern profile, Rubian worries that the dedicated knight doesn't seem to like him very much at all. Leon decisively announces that the child will ride with him on his horse instead of staying in the carriage. Surprised by the offer, Rubian learns that getting some fresh air is meant to help settle his motion sickness. Leviathan offers a gentle smile as Rubian expresses shock upon learning the hero hasn't slept throughout their journey. Reflecting on their travel map, Rubian feels guilty realizing Leviathan personally cared for him while he was bedridden and sick. Leviathan dismisses any concerns about his fatigue, claiming he managed to catch enough sleep here and there. Leon bluntly interrupts, warning that even knights collapse from such exhaustion, prompting an annoyed shout from Leviathan. Clutching his canteen, Rubian looks worried as Leon maintains his honest assessment of the hero's dangerous lack of rest. Determined to help, Rubian tugs on Leon's cloak and insists that Leviathan take a turn sleeping in the carriage. Running a hand through his hair, Leviathan reassures the child of his well-being and kindly invites him closer. With a bright look of surprise, Rubian leaps into the air toward the welcoming arms of the hero. Safely caught, Rubian looks back with a cheerful grin and reminds the hero to get some proper rest. Leviathan closes his eyes with a faint, content smile, finally allowing himself a moment of peace and quiet. As the carriage rolls along, the hero rests inside, while Leon carries Rubian on horseback through the sunny woods. Riding together, Leon scolds the white-haired child for his irreverent way of speaking to His Excellency. Leon questions if the boy's bold attitude stems from the fact that the hero was the one who rescued him. With a cold look, Leon warns Rubian that life at a ducal house is anything but comfortable. A grim vision reveals the Gebert territory as a brutal land of eternal war against encroaching magical beasts. Rubian sits quietly before Leon on the horse, his expression shifting as he considers the harsh reality of the North. Looking deep in thought, Rubian realizes just how dangerous the hero's homeland truly is for those living there. Watching the party travel through the meadow, Rubian laments the hero's decade spent fighting on such a bloody battlefield. Overwhelmed by the weight of the hero's difficult past, Rubian looks down with a somber and pitying expression. Shaking off his gloomy thoughts, the child resolves to do his absolute best once they arrive at their destination. The scene shifts as Leon suddenly hunches over in pain, his steady grip on the horse's reins faltering. Looking strained and covered in sweat, Leon's pained expression causes the white-haired child to cry out in worry. Setting up an emergency camp, Leviathan discovers Leon is bleeding from a hidden wound and orders him to rest. Leviathan's eyes narrow with concern as he realizes his loyal knight has been pushing himself far too hard. Kneeling nearby, Rubian gently tells Leon that there is no need to endure such pain while rushing anymore. Leon looks away in mild embarrassment, while Rubian lets out a playful hee-hee, softening the tense atmosphere. A thick, dark ointment is applied to Leon's bloody shoulder, the medicinal paste spread carefully over the injury. Leviathan treats the wound, emphasizing that they must all return home in good health after their long journey. Playful icons show Leon's quick recovery and Leviathan's teasing, while Rubian celebrates the knight feeling much better. Despite the warm-hearting moment, Rubian's expression sours as a foul odor begins to reach his sensitive nose. The atmosphere is pierced by the realization of a terrible stench emanating from the old-fashioned medicinal ointment. Plugging his nose, Rubian expresses his disgust at the smelly, outdated medicine they are using on Leon's wound. Rubian shies away from the smell, but Leon firmly tells him a knight must endure at least this much. Recalling his advanced knowledge, Rubian plots to use superior alchemy from the Mage Kingdom to create a better recipe. Under the starry night sky, Leviathan joins his men by the fire, while Rubian begins his secret work. A collection of flowers, oils, and liquids are prepared as the ingredients for the improved scent-free ointment. Rubian happily stirs his concoction, glad he found the right herbs to make the medicine even more effective. A sudden, familiar voice calls out to him from the darkness, catching the white-haired child completely off guard. Rubian freezes in shock, his eyes wide as he realizes someone has found his secret hiding place. Khalid emerges from the shadows with a squirrel on his head and loyal wolves by his side, greeting his master. A flashback shows a dark cave entrance where Rubian once discovered and rescued a trapped, lonely child. In the past, the young Khalid pledged his absolute loyalty after being saved by the white-haired wizard. Their magical bond is illustrated as a path of light, allowing them to sense each other's life and communication. Khalid scolds the boy for disappearing, while Rubian apologizes, explaining his desperate need to find Leviathan first. Looking stunned, Rubian questions how Khalid tracked him down and if they are currently within the city of Babylon. Rubian and Khalid communicate via magic as Khalid imagines a wolf folding its ears to look like it has none. Khalid suddenly terminates their magical connection, leaving the boy shocked as he promises to arrive at the camp soon. A shout rings through the night camp as Rubian warns the distant Khalid to just wait until he actually arrives. Leon offers a small wooden gift to the child, who looks up with genuine curiosity and asks what it is. Overwhelmed by the unexpected gift, the boy blushes and giggles while holding the item close with pure, heartfelt delight. Leon formally apologizes for his earlier harshness and thanks the white-haired child for the effective medicinal help he provided. The blue-haired knight requests to be addressed as senior, leaving the child bewildered by the sudden and unfamiliar title. Leviathan observes the exchange with a smile as Leon explains his sense of duty to the Zebert Night Order. Imagining the Night Order as a terrifying festival of muscle, the child recoils in horror at joining such men. Surrounded by magic props, the boy tearfully declares his identity as a mage rather than a hulking northern warrior. Leviathan leans in close, explaining the components of his herbal ointment with a calm and knowing smirk on his face. Caught off guard by a sudden question, the boy freezes as Leviathan asks how he learned such advanced medicinal preparation. The child laughs nervously while internally admitting he is definitely lying about the source of his advanced alchemical knowledge. Leviathan and Leon react with visible shock as the boy claims he learned complex herbology just by watching others. A playful moment unfolds as the boy tries to grab his ointment back from the hero's teasing and towering reach. The caravan winds through the mountain pass, the child finally free from sickness as they reach their northern destination. Bundled in thick winter furs, the child gazes in wide-eyed wonder at the frozen landscape of the northern Zebert territory. A black crow caws over a desolate, rocky gorge, highlighting the harsh and unforgiving nature of the winterland. Shivering in the biting cold, the white-haired boy wonders if they have actually arrived at the frozen gates of hell. Leviathan playfully squishes the child's blushing cheeks despite the boy's loud and energetic protests while they ride on horseback. Describing the brutal northern reality, Leviathan asks if the boy regrets choosing to stay in such a dangerous land. With a determined gaze, the child reaffirms his choice and insists that intimidation tactics will not drive him away. The party stops as Leviathan expresses relief, though the child remains confused by the knight's sudden, booming laughter. The massive stone walls of Zebert Castle emerge from the snowy peaks, marking the final end of their long journey. A family history reveals the fierce former Duke Balrog and the powerful lineage of the northern Zebert ducal house. Currently absent in the sunny south, the pink-haired Rosetta and eldest son Liam are shown enjoying the warmer shores. Entering the castle, the child is stunned by the overwhelming vigor of the retainers bowing to welcome their master home.
The boy stares in shock at the tall, muscular maids who dwarf him as he walks through the grand hall. The head butler, Adolf, greets his lord warmly before curiously inquiring about the small child accompanying the hero. Leviathan introduces Rubian, triggering an intense and glowing reaction from the gathered servants that startles the white-haired boy. Feeling like prey among carnivores, Rubian steals his resolve, clutching the hero's cloak and deciding to greet the household staff with proper northern dignity. Surrounded by a floral aura, the child politely introduces himself and asks the servants for their kind future regards. The servants squeal at his adorable greeting, while the boy nervously continues to wring the hero's cloak in his hands. Leviathan scoops the child up, calling his name as the boy continues his struggle to maintain a serious demeanor. Teased about being shy, the child pouts and insists he can be delicate while cradled by the hero's arms. The boy demands respect by claiming to be 8, but Leviathan warns him against telling lies during their introductions. Internally, the child laments that even his lie about being 8 failed, since he is actually 10 years old. The maids gossip in disbelief, finding it impossible to believe the tiny, delicate boy is even 6 years old. Holding the boy aloft, Leviathan jokingly warns everyone that he bites, while the child demands to be put down. The chaotic greeting is interrupted by a sudden, swift descent as a dark figure falls from the upper floor. Landing with a flourish, the energetic second son, Boyd Siebert, excitedly greets his master after their long separation. Boyd strikes a dynamic landing pose on the floor, his purple eyes sparkling with joy at the hero's return. The white-haired child watches curiously as the energetic newcomer is formally identified as the second son, Boyd Siebert. Amidst the curious household staff, the child observes Boyd's lively antics from the safety of the hero's steady arms. Leviathan looks on with a calm and pleased expression, watching the household settle after their long absence. In a cheerful chibi-style moment, Leviathan praises Boyd's energetic greeting while the boy celebrates with high enthusiasm. Boyd stands with a bright, confident smile, his purple eyes reflecting his cheerful and untroubled northern personality. Rubian notes Boyd's brave demeanor, realizing the boy is even more untroubled than the original story ever suggested. A narrative summary reveals Boyd's tragic past as an orphan who was adopted and raised as a bright Siebert son. Rubian introduces himself to Void, who finds the white-haired child even more adorable than he first imagined. Posing confidently, Void flashes a bright smile while Rubian watches the energetic boy with a curious and quiet expression. Rubian clenches his fist in secret triumph, feeling satisfied that he has finally met someone ranked beneath his status. With a beaming face and open arms, Void enthusiastically welcomes Rubian to the household as his new little brother. Chaotic energy fills the room as Void chases the child, who loudly insists he is not actually that small. Leviathan listens to Adolf's report about the old master's health and decides to introduce Rubian to his father later. Void playfully squishes Rubian's cheeks, begging his father to let him accompany him to the office for the day. Lifting the child high into the air, Void celebrates his father's permission while Leviathan tells him to stop. Void runs off to play later, leaving Rubian dizzy and spinning on the floor before the watchful, concerned servants. Adolf notes that Void is becoming independent, while Leviathan reflects on the strong similarities between the father and son. A flashback reveals that a younger Void used to cry whenever he saw Leviathan's scary face, causing long-term distance. Rubian lets out a quiet nod of understanding, internally agreeing that his uncle's face is indeed quite frightening. Rubian playfully kicks at Leviathan's legs, prompting the hero to joke that the child is behaving like a wild beast. The butler, Adolf, interrupts the play to introduce a new personal staff member to the young Master Rubian. Surrounded by a warm, floral aura, Hazel introduces herself with a polite bow as Rubian's new personal castlemaid. Rubian is caught off guard and grips the hero's cloak tightly when he hears the suggestion of taking a bath.
The child imagines a fun bath filled with bubbles and toys, feeling a sudden wave of excitement about the water. Panic strikes as Rubian realizes that a bath with Hazel would expose his secret runaway mage identity mark.
Leviathan leans in with a worried expression, asking if the child is starting to feel sick or unwell again. Stammering a nervous denial, Rubian tries to hide his anxiety from the curious looks of the hero and servants.
Rubian pulls Leviathan close to whisper a serious secret, his expression becoming solemn and focused as he begins speaking.
The child's blushing face is full of intensity as he whispers his hidden concerns directly into the hero's ear. Leviathan reacts with visible shock as he processes the boy's mention of a serious wound on his small body. Handing the boy to Hazel, Leviathan instructs the maid to take good care of the child during his warm bath.
Hazel takes Rubian's hand and leads him away while the child looks back at the hero with a lingering gaze.
Leviathan's expression turns terrifyingly dark as he fumes over the mysterious origin of the large scar on Rubian's skin. Alone in front of a grand mirror, Rubian lifts his shirt to inspect a long, thin scar across his stomach. Rubian reveals a black dragon seal on his abdomen, realizing he must hide it to avoid being caught.
Observing the atmosphere, Rubian is pleased to find the mana in the north is surprisingly rich and high quality.
Rubian concentrates his magic power, resolving to use the abundant local mana to permanently hide his runaway mage seal. A magical surge resonates through the room as Rubian successfully deploys a complex circuit to hide the dragon mark. Brilliant light flows over Rubian's skin as the concealing spell activates, successfully masking the dark seal on his stomach. Checking his reflection, Rubian is relieved to see his skin is clear and the dragon seal is completely gone. The white-haired child laughs victoriously, feeling safe now that his true identity as a mage is finally hidden.
After the bath, Rubian relaxes while the maids dry him, commenting on how refreshing the warm water felt.
A warm and happy glow surrounds Rubian's blushing face as he enjoys the comfort of the maid's gentle care. Hazel notices that the clothes provided are much too large and decides that Rubian needs a custom-made northern wardrobe. The child playfully flaps his oversized sleeves, but the maids find the sight of him incredibly cute and endearing. Hazel advises him to wear properly fitting clothes to avoid accidents and then invites him to a grand dinner. Seated on a stool, Rubian learns that he will be having his first official castle meal alone with Void. Void gives a cheerful peace sign as Rubian decides to make the most of this chance to build influence. A tiny mascot appears as the narrator notes Void's naturally lively and energetic personality within the grand castle walls. Leviathan watches from the side as Void carries Rubian around the room with great enthusiasm and playful northern joy. The table is filled with a delicious feast as Void declares that his little brother needs a lot of care.
Void offers to cut the meat for him, but Rubian insists that he is perfectly capable of eating himself.
Despite the child's protests, Void feeds him a large piece of meat while sighing about the duties of brotherhood. Rubian finds the attention surprisingly comfortable, while Void laughs brightly as they share the delicious meal together. Void watches with deep satisfaction, feeling a strong sense of responsibility to care for his new little brother always. Pausing his meal, Rubian asks why they are the only ones eating and where their uncle Leviathan has gone. Void pauses and explains with a gentle smile that their father is usually too busy to join them for dinner. Rubian expresses surprise at learning that his uncle rarely eats with his son, finding the situation quite unexpected. The white-haired child observes Boyd eating alone, noting the boy seems tragically accustomed to the lack of company. Determined to change the mood, Boyd prepares to reveal a special item he has been keeping for later. Rubian beams with pure joy as he presents a decorative collector's book to his new older brother. Boyd reacts with a comical explosion of shock,
his purple eyes widening as he recognizes the rare gift. Gasping in disbelief, Boyd identifies the treasure as a limited edition hero collection card from the capital city.
A memory shows Rubian boldly demanding money from Leviathan at a market while clarifying his gender to merchants. Despite the hero's skepticism about its value, the child and a local merchant passionately defend the popular trading cards.
Rubian smiles, recalling how Boyd wanted this card in the original story, and deciding to use it as a bribe. Overwhelmed by the thoughtful gift, Boyd is moved to tears while Rubian looks on with an awkward, blushing smile. Boyd glows with happiness, noting that his father has also arrived as they celebrate their burgeoning brotherhood together. As night falls over the grand castle, Rubian's firm refusal echoes through the quiet halls during a private moment. The child wakes up tangled in his blankets, clutching a plush bunny after a surprisingly restful night of sleep. Rubian is startled to find Leviathan sitting nearby in the bedroom, calmly observing the boy as he finally wakes. Startled and confused, the white-haired boy questions why his uncle is lingering in his room so early this morning. Rubian demands answers about his uncle's presence, wondering if the busy hero has any actual work to attend to. A soft rustling sound accompanies Leviathan's large hand as he gently pats the boy's messy white hair in greeting. Without further explanation, the tall man stands to depart, curtly instructing the child to enjoy a hearty morning breakfast. Rubian feels a pang of disappointment, questioning why the hero refuses to join his family for a meal together. The child follows his uncle into the hallway, asking if his absence is due to a dislike for Boyd. Leviathan denies the claim with a stoic face, leaving the child to wonder about the true reason for his distance. Promising to eat together once the workload lessens, Leviathan bids farewell as Rubian waves him off from the doorway. A heavy sigh escapes the hero as he stands alone in the grand, ornate hall, burdened by unspoken thoughts. Leviathan reflects on the boy's health, feeling relieved that Rubian didn't suffer from any nightmares during his first night. The scene shifts back to a dark, starry night where pained whispers reveal a past filled with lingering trauma. During a journey, the knights watched in pity as Rubian suffered through a feverish nightmare about a lost village. A brief, happy memory of the child running through green fields gathering firewood contrasts with his current inner turmoil. Leviathan worries that Rubian carries the scars of a battlefield soldier, just as the butler Adolf approaches him quietly. Adolf inquires about his master's deep distraction, noting that the hero didn't even hear him enter the hallway.
In a rare moment of levity, Leviathan dismisses his ridiculous thoughts while the butler watches him with quiet curiosity.
Looking at Boyd, the hero laments his own failings as a father and wishes for Rosetta's guidance at home. Adolf presents a newly arrived response to Leviathan's letter regarding the child's adoption into the Northern Siebert house. The letter contains a brief, mysterious message in ornate script, stating that the details will be discussed upon return. The butler and his lord discuss the expected arrival of Rosetta, hoping her return will bring balance to the household. Reading a postscript questioning Rubian's gender, the hero lets out a small, subtle smile at the playful inquiry. The limited edition card reveals a heroic, stylized illustration of Leviathan himself, surrounded by a brilliant floral aura. Boyd clutches the card with sparkling eyes, his heart filled with adoration for his father's legendary, heroic image. With high spirits, the boy dashes toward Rubian's room, eager to play with his new treasure and little brother. Boyd stops dead in his tracks, horrified to see Rubian surrounded by maids and strange tools on the floor. Throwing himself in front of the child, Boyd shouts in a protective rage, ready to defend his little brother. The maids jump in surprise, especially Hazel, who holds a pair of sharp, ornate scissors in her trembling hands. Boyd accuses the staff of bullying, while Hazel desperately explains they were only attempting to trim the child's hair. Shivering and overwhelmed, Rubian clings to his older brother while Boyd continues to shout his fierce protective demands. Leviathan enters the room to investigate the chaos, finding Rubian insisting he is fine despite the obvious high tension. Boyd refuses to back down, pointing out that Rubian was visibly shaking from the sight of the sharp scissors. With a terrifyingly cold voice, Leviathan commands Hazel to put the scissors away immediately, ending the frightening hair session. Stricken with guilt, Hazel drops to her knees and tearfully begs the young master for his sincere forgiveness. The maids wail in dramatic despair, claiming they would offer their very lives to atone for scaring the child. Panic-stricken by their extreme reaction, Rubian waves his hands and begs the sobbing servants to please stand up. Leviathan praises his son for his protective instincts, returning the lost card as Boyd proudly declares his brotherhood. Leviathan prepares to reprimand the staff, but Rubian intercedes, softly pleading for the hero to spare them his anger. For the child's sake, Leviathan grants a single reprieve, prompting the trembling maids to bow in deep, tearful gratitude. Leviathan gazes at Rubian with newfound softness, acknowledging that even he has no right to force the boy's hand. Rubian suggests a hairpin to keep his bangs back, sparking a burst of energetic excitement from a nearby maid. The white-haired child looks up curiously as Leviathan's large hand reaches out to gently touch his messy silver locks. A sharp exclamation marks the hero's sudden command, ordering the maids to fetch suitable accessories for Rubian's long hair. Boyd checks on his little brother, noticing Rubian looks pale while the boy expresses his heartfelt thanks for the help. The atmosphere shifts as Leviathan reminds Boyd of his training, causing the purple-eyed boy to gasp in sudden comic realization. Shouting his immediate departure, Boyd dashes through the grand hallway with a swift zoom to attend his swordsmanship practice. Rubian playfully suggests that Leviathan's own terrifying expression might be the real reason the servants are so frightened of him. A dramatic splash echoes through the castle as a maid collapses into a fountain, overwhelmed by her own perceived failures. Hazel wails in despair, lamenting her lack of finesse and fearing her mercenary past makes her unfit to serve Rubian. Amidst the garden statues, the maids worry that their rough manners will lead the young master to replace a replacement. A sharp clap rings out as the maids remind each other of how Rubian stood up to protect them earlier. Recalling Rubian's defense of their mistakes, the maids are moved to tears by the child's incredibly kind and pure heart. In their imagination, an angelic Rubian plays a harp, inspiring the servants to vow perfect service to their little master. The scene shifts to a quiet, darkened room filled with star-shaped mobiles and the soft glow of a single candle. Shelves and racks reveal a hidden collection of feminine shoes and dresses, all meticulously preserved within the silent, ornate chamber. Lantern in hand, the maids search the forbidden East Room for hair accessories, eventually discovering a box of delicate jeweled pins. The servants somberly reflect on the Duke and Duchess's lost daughter, for whom these many girls' items were originally intended. A flashback reveals a carriage traveling through a rocky valley where a collapsed hooded mage was once discovered and helped. Moved by pity, the pregnant Duchess allowed the mysterious mage to travel with her, unaware of the impending, tragic betrayal. Violence erupts as the mage turns on his rescuers. Blood splatters as the Duchess suffers an injury that costs her child. Returning to the present, a bright strawberry hairpin now rests atop Rubian's white hair, held in place by a ribbon. The maids gush over the strawberry fairy look, while Rubian inwardly notes that the items are clearly intended for girls. Looking out over the castle, Rubian realizes these precious items were meant for the northern family's unborn, tragically lost daughter. A sudden wobble catches Rubian off guard as he wonders if it's truly okay to wear such a meaningful, sentimental treasure. Leviathan leans in close to inspect the child, causing Rubian to sweat nervously under the hero's intense purple-eyed scrutiny. The tall man adjusts Rubian's seat to get a better view, looming over the child with a stoic and unreadable expression. Rubian blushes deeply, realizing he must guard his secrets more carefully to ensure no one discovers his true hidden identity. Leviathan begins to speak, calling him Ruby, while the child grips the chair in suspense, fearing his dual secrets are exposed.
To Rubian's surprise, the hero only asks if he was truly afraid of the sharp scissors used during the hair session.
The grand bedroom falls silent as the maids observe Leviathan questioning the boy about his earlier visible shaking and fear. Rubian waves his hands, explaining that he was merely startled by a stranger holding a sharp blade so close to him. The maids collapse in dramatic guilt, while Rubian attributes his high-strung reaction to his lingering, battlefield-born instincts and tension.
Leviathan notes that the boy's back hair is uncomfortably tangled and suggests a proper trim once Rubian is fully settled in.
The hero offers to cut the hair himself, arguing that a family member's touch would be far less frightening than a stranger's. A humorous summary notes Leviathan's high trustworthiness and blade skills, but highlights his absolute lack of any actual hairdressing experience. Rubian crosses his arms in a firm rejection, shouting that an inexperienced amateur is completely disqualified from touching his hair. Boyd dismisses the importance of hairstyles for boys, only for Rubian to threaten to cut Boyd's own hair in a huff. Leviathan looks down at the grumbling child, the silence between them thick with a strange, burgeoning bond and domestic awkwardness.
The Zebert hair salon officially opens as Leviathan takes up the scissors, much to the nervous concern of the watching maids.
Leviathan compares the child's hair to cotton candy, prompting Rubian to scream for a cancellation, fearing he's met a cannibal. A sharp snip sound fills the air, causing the maids to cry out in horror as the hero begins his amateur haircut. Rubian squeezes his eyes shut and blushes as Leviathan's large hand tilts his chin to finalize the delicate silver hair trim. Waking from a short nap, Rubian is surprised to find the haircut finished and Leviathan holding up a mirror for inspection.
The result is surprisingly neat and stylish. Rubian stares in awe at his reflection, adorned with the tiny red strawberry pen.
A bright pop of joy follows as Rubian praises Leviathan's unexpected skill, leaving the hero to stare back in silent, stoic bewilderment. Leviathan playfully bites the boy's head, jokingly testing if the silver hair really would melt in his mouth like candy. With a swift smack of his lips, the hero notes the hair didn't melt while Rubian scurries away in absolute red-faced shock. Leviathan lifts Rubian by his collar, surprising the silver-haired child with a sudden, playful capture. Rubian grumbles as Leviathan plants a sudden kiss on his head, calling the hero an arbitrary old man. The child's face Boyd gawks in wide-eyed shock, convinced his little brother has transformed into a sparkling strawberry fairy. During a lavish meal, the maids explain that Leviathan is too busy with paperwork to join the boys. Boyd looks downcast, lamenting that his father is always buried in work and away from the table. Rubian remains silent, absorbing the heavy atmosphere and the distance between the father and his eldest son. Hazel offers to escort the young master, but Rubian's thoughts are already elsewhere as he leaves his seat. Guided by the maid, Rubian walks through the hallway, his mind racing with a new, determined plan. A close-up of the child's focused gaze underscores his realization that he has found a necessary truth. Rubian questions the staff about Leviathan's habits, wondering if the man is truly unreachable during the day. The maids recount the family's fractured history, noting Boyd's childhood fear of his father's cold, distant nature. A somber flashback shows a lonely Leviathan eating in silence while a terrified young Boyd is led away. Dark shadows loom over the castle as the maids describe Leviathan's past irritability during Rosetta's long illness. Rubian concludes that the hero's despair was rooted in the tragic loss of his unborn silver-haired daughter. Abruptly changing course, Rubian tells a surprised Hazel that he wants to return to the dining room immediately. Feeling a sense of debt toward his new family, Rubian decides to take matters into his own hands. Returning to the table, Rubian finds Boyd still eating, his presence bringing a spark back to the room. Rubian boldly suggests that they should start inviting Leviathan to share their meals from now on. Boyd gasps in pure comical disbelief at the thought of suddenly confronting their intimidating father with such a request. Rubian playfully teases Boyd about his lingering fear, though the older boy denies being afraid of the old man. With a determined stride, Rubian heads toward the door, ready to face the man who rules the castle. Boyd scratches his head with a nervous smile, watching his little brother's surprisingly fearless and proactive behavior. Surrounded by a dark aura and metaphorical devil wings, Rubian prepares to unleash a mischievous scheme. Boyd recoils in mock terror, seeing the devious glint in Rubian's eyes and sensing a demonic plot afoot. Deep within his study, Leviathan is startled by a rhythmic tock, 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 sounding at his door. Exhausted, Leviathan orders the visitor to leave the documents and go, overwhelmed by the mountain of paperwork. Rubian marches in wearing a tiny suit and glasses, saluting the Duke with a formal, professional greeting. The child bows politely, requesting a moment of the busy lord's time while holding a sturdy clipboard. Staring in bewilderment, Leviathan is completely caught off guard by the child's scholarly appearance and bold entry. With a sharp talk, Rubian slams the clipboard onto the desk, demanding the hero's immediate attention. Rubian beams with a cheeky, knowing smile as Leviathan reaches out to take the mysterious document. The paper is covered in ornate, cryptic symbols, representing a list of supplies drafted by the child. Leviathan asks if the boy wrote the message himself, receiving an enthusiastic and proud yes in response. Leaning over the desk, Rubian points to the lines, urging the hero to sign off on the request. Unaware of the trap, Leviathan signs the paper, much to Rubian's visible and giggling delight. Adjusting his glasses, Rubian declares that the Duke's attendance is now officially mandatory for their upcoming meal. Rubian dashes away with a wink, leaving a stunned Leviathan to realize he has just been tricked. A crisp white tablecloth is unfurled with a flourish, signaling the start of a major household event. The castle staff works in a frantic blur, decorating the hall with massive red bows and floral arrangements. Rubian watches the bustling activity with a touch of guilt, realizing how much effort his request has triggered. Boyd and Rubian sit together, the older boy surprised by the sudden transition from simple meal to party. The head chef approaches the young masters, checking in as he prepares for the grand evening feast. Surrounded by visions of tarts and cakes, the chef smiles warmly at the thought of pleasing the children. Rubian bashfully admits his lack of experience with sweets, having rarely tasted cake in his difficult life. Visions of a grim orphanage and a desolate battlefield reveal the harsh reality of Rubian's past privation. The chef kindly promises to prepare a wide variety of treats to help Rubian discover his favorite flavor. The dining table is transformed into a breathtaking buffet of roasted meats, pies, and vibrant fruit salads. Floral borders and twinkling lights mark a magical transition as the castle prepares for the family gathering. The grand hall is fully transformed, radiating a celebratory glow that promises a night of rare family unity. Rubian glows with pure joy, blushing as he proudly displays the sparkling strawberry pin in his silver hair.
Boyd and Rubian excitedly greet Leviathan as father and uncle, their bright voices filling the castle hallway.
Leviathan notes the servants likely struggled with the two troublemakers as the scene shifts to the grand interior. Seated at a lavish table, Leviathan wonders why he's the guest of honor at this sudden, festive banquet.
Rubian playfully pushes Boyd aside, asserting himself as a central figure in the lively family celebration. Boyd looks on with a determined and slightly competitive gaze as the two brothers continue their high-energy antics.
Leviathan sits stoically while Boyd approaches him, the height difference between father and son highlighting their burgeoning bond. Boyd's eyes sparkle with genuine warmth as he expresses his heartfelt desire to hold a special welcome party. Leviathan looks away with a serious, unreadable expression, perhaps reflecting on the unexpected kindness from his eldest son. Leviathan places a gentle hand on Boyd's head, softly thanking him while the boy beams with absolute happiness.
A chibi-style Rubian with cute cat ears and glasses looks on with wide, surprised eyes as plans change.
Boyd celebrates their successful family dinner while Leviathan remains seated, absorbing the rare, warm atmosphere of the room. Rubian gives Boyd a skeptical side-eye while the older boy continues to chatter enthusiastically about their progress. Boyd's face is shown in a close-up of pure resolve, his vibrant purple eyes shining with youthful determination. Leviathan listens patiently as Boyd leans in to speak, while Rubian stands nearby in quiet, observant silence.
Rubian giggles mischievously while Leviathan realizes the war is truly over and he cannot hide from domestic life.
Leviathan gazes down with a rare, softening smile, looking every bit the proud protector of his growing family.
Boyd points a finger at Rubian, who looks startled by the sudden shift of the conversation toward him.
Leviathan realizes he accidentally signed for Rubian's welcome banquet instead of his own, while Boyd cheers yes.
Leviathan declares Rubian the star of the party as Boyd begins to chase the protesting silver-haired child. Boyd tackles Rubian in a playful hug, laughing while the smaller child shouts "traitor" at his grinning brother.
The chef presents a colossal, three-tiered strawberry cake, leaving Boyd and Rubian looking up in stunned, hungry awe.
Rubian sits at the table wearing a festive party hat, looking like the true guest of honor he is.
The maids work in a frantic, happy blur, crafting even more paper hots to fuel the evening's festivities. Night falls as laughter echoes from the castle, with a sleepy Rubian declaring he is finally completely full. Leviathan carries the slumbering Rubian on his back, noting the child's deep exhaustion from all the party planning. Leviathan smiles warmly and thanks the sleepy child for the party, while Rubian lets out a tired, soft yawn.
Rubian yawns while clinging to Leviathan's back, sleepily confirming he knows the way to the Duke's private bedroom.
Leviathan offers a comforting promise to be there if the child is ever scared of the dark or nightmares. Leviathan carries the dreaming Ruby through the sparkling hallway, whispering a gentle, sleep well into the quiet night. Rubian wakes up with a start and immediately begins devouring a massive piece of cake with a fork. Leviathan relaxes on the sofa, noting Rubian's excitement for the sweets as the child continues his midnight feast.
Leviathan jokingly confiscates a bite of the cake, calling Rubian insolent, while the silver-haired boy eats with gusto.
Rubian happily notes the cake is delicious, relieved that the chef's hard work on the strawberry cream succeeded. Leviathan mentions an old man arriving soon, causing Rubian to wonder if he refers to the legendary Lord Zebert. Rubian recalls Lord Zebert as a sickly, minor character from the original story, as a massive sword appears. A thunderous bang echoes through the room as a door is suddenly and violently smashed completely off its hinges. Rubian panics at the deafening noise, wondering if the castle is under a sudden and terrifying monster attack. Leviathan calmly tells the child to finish his cake, assuring him that the boisterous visitor will arrive shortly.
Lord Zebert, a burly man with gray hair and a beard, bursts into the room with a mighty shout.
The muscular old man peeks through the shattered doorway with a dark, shadowed face and glowing, intense eyes. With a fierce and explosive expression, the old man bellows, "Is this an attack?" As his eyes flare, the gray-haired warrior unleashes a powerful
that sends debris flying and shakes the entire room's foundation.
Leviathan scolds the old man for breaking doors and scaring Rubian while the boy hides behind him.
Lord Zebert shouts at the top of his lungs, demanding to see the new kid without a moment's delay. Leviathan calmly points down to Rubian, indicating to the loud, hulking man that the child is right there. The massive Lord Zebert looms over the tiny, silver-haired child, who hides nervously behind Leviathan's protective leg. The old man stares down with intense, purple-eyed focus, causing Rubian to sweat under the crushing, silent pressure. Lord Zebert bellows at Rubian, calling him a little booger, while Leviathan maintains his stoic and unbothered stance. Rubian stares in terror at the old man's massive, clenched fist, fearing he might be smashed just like the door.
Zebert orders Rubian to approach at once, terrifying the poor silver-haired boy with his overwhelming and aggressive presence.
A violent crash sounds as Rubian screams in fear, the floor shaking from the old man's destructive power. Zebert slams his massive axe into the floor with a sharp talk, leaving Rubian trembling before the warrior's strength. Zebert mockingly measures Rubian's height against monster standards, while the confused child wonders why he is being judged.
With a fierce roar, Zebert brandishes his weapon until Leviathan intercedes, coolly telling his father that is enough.
Zebert bellows about Rubian's small stature, demanding the tiny booger be sent back to the capital immediately.
Leviathan looks on with a cold and exhausted expression, clearly tired of his father's loud and boisterous antics.
Rubbing his head in frustration, Leviathan scolds the old man for his unintelligible mumbling and for scaring the child.
Fear grips Rubian as he realizes his siblings were accepted while he faces immediate and terrifying rejection.
Zebert mocks Rubian's fragile appearance, while the boy looks up at the towering man from Leviathan's side.
Leviathan stares down his father, firmly stating that he will not allow Rubian to be treated like a soldier.
Zebert shouts over a table of sweets, blaming Leviathan for bringing such a doll-like child to the north.
Rubian steps forward with tears in his eyes, begging the two men to stop arguing on his account.
The silver-haired boy cries out that he has nowhere else to go and would rather die than return.
Rubian promises to eat and grow strong, while Leviathan watches the child's heartbreakingly earnest display of determination. Large, sorrowful tears spill from Rubian's eyes as he pleads for a chance to stay with his new family.
Leviathan lifts the sobbing boy into the air, promising to show him something truly surprising to calm his nerves.
Leviathan carries the child close, noting how irritating the situation has become as floral patterns frame the quiet scene. Leviathan ignores his father's shouts of disrespect, deciding to take Rubian away for some warm, comforting hot chocolate.
Rubian panics as they walk away, convinced that leaving the room means his chance to stay is officially over.
Zebert stands with crossed arms and a stern gaze, appearing completely unmoved by the emotional scene unfolding before him. Leviathan holds Rubian tightly as the boy continues to cry, a rhythmic heartbeat sounding through the silent, tense room. Rubian wails his promise to live there no matter what, clinging to Leviathan with all his tiny, desperate might.
The boy's desperate cries of "I do" echo throughout the entire castle, reaching every corner of the grand estate. Leviathan suppresses a laugh at the child's dramatic outburst, much to the curiosity of the tearful and confused Rubian.
Zebert calls Rubian a troublesome little booger, while Leviathan continues to chuckle at the ridiculous nature of the situation. An imaginary interview banner appears as Zebert looms over Rubian, who sits nervously in a tiny blue chair. Leaning in with an intense, purple-eyed gaze, Zebert asks if Rubian truly wishes to remain in the household.
Zebert slams the desk, challenging the boy to prove his worth through stamina or combat prowess immediately.
Rubian cheekily claims he is a mage, pulling off a magical hat trick that leaves Zebert sweating in disbelief.
Rubian pivotally declares his greatest strength is mental fortitude, causing Leviathan to snicker loudly in the background.
Siebert commands the boy to finish his snack, shouting loudly while Leviathan remains seated across from them.
A large hand slams onto the table as Siebert declares he would never turn away a child who is eating. Rubian is sent flying backward as the table suddenly flips, though he continues to munch on his cake mid-air. The silver-haired child panics, fearing that the sudden explosion means he is being kicked out after all. The table shatters into pieces under Siebert's power, leaving Rubian and Leviathan sitting amidst the smoking, broken ruins. Rubian gasps in horror at his ruined dessert, mourning the fact that he only got one single bite. Looking at his shattered cake, Rubian wonders if this is a mental test to see if he dwells on the past. Siebert shouts for the servants to bring every cake in the castle immediately to appease the distraught silver-haired boy. A perfect slice of strawberry cream cake glitters enticingly, representing the many treats about to arrive for the child. Leviathan announces he is leaving to check on something, leaving a stunned Rubian alone with the intimidating old man. Rubian eats his cake in a daze, wondering how he is supposed to survive alone with the terrifying Lord Siebert. Siebert warns the child about the dangerous beasts in the north that would eat a rabbit like him. Siebert's intense eyes narrow as he watches the boy's reaction to his frightening stories of magical beasts. Realizing he can use the old man's protective nature, Rubian admits that he is actually a little scared. Rubian unleashes his attack number 1, gazing up at Siebert with sparkling, wide puppy dog eyes. The plan works perfectly as Siebert softens, declaring he won't kick out a child who is trembling in fear. Rubian continues his act, hugging the old man's leg while claiming the outside world is far too scary.
Siebert blushes and roars with embarrassed affection, clearly won over by the child's adorable and calculated charm.
Rubian smiles triumphantly among floating cats and cake, confident that his place in the castle is finally secure. Siebert holds Rubian up by his collar, questioning the boy's gender because he seems far too soft.
Siebert bellows about the tailor's absence while Rubian sits beside him, looking like a tiny, misplaced potato sack.
Rubian flails his arms in a dramatic panic, asking Siebert if he truly wishes to kick him out. With a fiery, exaggerated roar, the silver-haired boy expresses his fierce indignation at the thought of being rejected.
Rubian reacts with shock when a mysterious voice calls out the name Ruby and asks if he's there.
The silver-haired boy suddenly leaps off the sofa, shouting that he needs to use the bathroom immediately. Rubian sprints away toward the door, promising the startled maid that he will return in just a moment. Siebert reaches out in stunned silence, his hand frozen in the air as he watches the child vanish. Question marks fill the air as Siebert sweats profusely, completely bewildered by the boy's sudden and frantic departure. The maid watches Rubian run off, informing Siebert that the child actually retreated to his own private room. Looking concerned, the maid explains that Rubian is likely upset because Siebert kept trying to kick him out. Visualizing northern traditions, Rubian thinks of squires like Boyd training with logs and bears to become gallant knights. An adorable white kitten hisses from a basket of yarn, representing the small but fierce spirit Rubian possesses. Siebert tries to justify his actions, while the maid argues that his rejection created a lasting, painful memory. Siebert imagines a ferocious white tiger, wondering if his aggressive presence has truly terrified the poor, small child. Sweat beads on Siebert's face as he struggles to reconcile his harsh northern standards with the boy's cuteness. The maid defends Rubian's bravery, while a skeptical Siebert shouts, demanding to know what is brave about him. A look of genuine shock washes over Siebert's face as he realizes the impact of his cold behavior. The maid notes that while other children avoided the Duke, Rubian stayed, though that might change after tonight's events. Siebert stands frozen in a daze, realizing that the distraught Rubian didn't even get to finish his cake. Alone in his room, Rubian stands before his door, his mind racing as he processes the day's heavy events.
Rubian's bright blue eyes sparkle with a sudden realization of his own intelligence and the gravity of his situation. A dark, towering figure looms behind Rubian as he learns that King Arkan is searching for him in Babylon. Rubian clutches his chest in a cold sweat, hearing the distant, urgent calls of Ruby echoing in his mind.
Huddled on the floor, Rubian hears Khalid's voice promising to come for him and telling him to calm down.
The silver-haired child trembles, whispering his terror of being dragged back to the kingdom against his will.
Khalid advises Rubian to stick close to the skilled Duke Siebert, leaving the boy wondering how Khalid knew his location.
Khalid's gentle voice reassures the tearful boy that he could never be angry with him, no matter what happens.
Rubian learns that trackers are useless in Babylon's manaless land, though he admits that things are still very hard. Rubian and the black-haired Khalid sit back to back in a serene, starry expanse, finding comfort in their shared mental bond. Clenching his fist with renewed determination, Rubian decides he must stop sitting around and begin preparing for his future.
Dressed as a tiny detective, Rubian theorizes that northern monsters are the only enemies capable of threatening his uncle. Rubian recalls the original story where Boyd reconciles with his uncle at 12, realizing the timeline has shifted significantly.
Sitting on the floor of his quiet room, Rubian begins to concentrate, a soft blue light flickering around him.
Massive magical circles erupt around Rubian as he taps into his hidden power, his eyes glowing with focused intensity.
A vast cosmic sea called Waziria appears, filled with intricate magic formulas that provide the foundation for all magic. Floating through the stars, Rubian explains how Waziria taught him every magic circle, allowing him to live as a mage. Within the starry void, Waziria offers assistance to Rubian, who eagerly accepts the powerful entity's guidance and support. Rubian looks up in awe at the cosmic beauty surrounding him, ready to find the specific power he needs. Searching through the swirling galaxies, the silver-haired boy pushes past various energies, searching for the perfect magical solution. Holding a brilliant, glowing star, Rubian confidently declares that this newfound power will allow him to protect his uncle.
Rubian bursts into the study, startling Boyd so badly that the dark-haired boy jumps and drops his quill.
Boyd turns around with a blush, looking flustered as Rubian approaches him with a mischievous, wide-eyed grin. The silver-haired boy playfully peeks over Boyd's shoulder, asking if the dark-haired youth has been writing about him. Rubian lies on the floor searching for a map while Boyd offers to fetch it from the library shelf.
With a knowing smile, Boyd warns Rubian to be careful, implying he has already faced the Duke's harsh training.
Rubian slumps onto the table in exhaustion as Boyd describes the terrifying midnight training sessions in the northern mountains.
Night falls as Rubian sits up in bed, clutching his teddy bear and looking expectantly toward the bedroom door. Leviathan opens the door, asking why the child is still awake, while Rubian asks if he is working late again. Leviathan enters to check on him, and Rubian realizes he is doing rounds when he notices his uncle smells like Boyd's room.
Leviathan asks about Rubian's stomach after he fled the room. The silver-haired boy looks back with confusion.
Rubian insists he is totally fine, sweating slightly as he admits he wasn't actually sick to begin with. As Leviathan ruffles his hair, Rubian maintains he just needed the bathroom, denying that the Duke bullied him. Leviathan's purple eyes narrow as he contemplates removing the passage to the northern annex to protect the child. Rubian rolls around playfully on his bed, looking adorable with little chick graphics floating around his silver hair.
A gentle, rare smile crosses Leviathan's face as
Rubian pauses, thinking about how strange his situation feels, while acknowledging he doesn't mind being used by others. A sudden sneeze overcomes Rubian, causing him to hunch over, while Leviathan watches him with a concerned expression. Leviathan looks down solemnly,
his focus entirely on the small, silver-haired boy sitting on the large, ornate bed.
Leviathan reaches out his large hand toward Rubian's head, his touch appearing remarkably hesitant, gentle, and careful. Leviathan playfully ruffles the boy's hair, calling him a little brat while the giggling Rubian begs him to stop. Night falls over the quiet room as Leviathan watches the silver-haired child sleep soundly beside his teddy bear. Leviathan sits on the bed with his head in his hands, frustrated by Rubian's constant fear of being abandoned.
Rubian stirs and groans in his sleep, prompting Leviathan to lean in with a worried and alert expression. Cradling the boy, Leviathan lifts Rubian as the child mumbles in his sleep about not wanting to leave. Cradling the boy, Leviathan walks through the dark room, urging the dreaming Rubian to tell him what is wrong. The scene shifts to a golden-hued vision where a long, white-haired man stands over a small, bowing child. Calling him his lovely seventh child, the white-haired man gazes down at the silver-haired boy in the vision. The man laments Rubian's injuries, a glowing light emanating from his hand as he reaches toward the wounded child. With a sudden, forceful motion, the man's hand grips Rubian's clothing tightly, his tone shifting into something far darker.
The white-haired man commands Rubian to capture a warlock alive, stating that is the reason they are at war.
His red eyes flash as he warns Rubian not to let Zebert take the target, leaving the boy trembling. Rubian gasps as he realizes he disobeyed orders, the memory of his father looming over him like a shadow. Rubian smiles with a fierce glint in his red-tinted eyes, declaring that he has finally defeated his father. Rubian strikes the white-haired man, who recoils in shock, roaring the boy's name as the vision suddenly shatters. A sharp gasp sounds as Rubian bolts upright in bed, waking up from his intense and terrifying nightmare. The silver-haired boy beams with joy, exclaiming that he had a great sleep despite the heavy dreams. Startled by a movement under his covers, Rubian cries out in shock as the blanket suddenly shifts beside him. Boyd yawns and emerges from the bed, explaining he came to play cards while Rubian watches in total disbelief. Boyd nonchalantly decides to leave without playing, leaving the silver-haired boy staring at him with a very confused look. Rubbing his eyes, Boyd walks away with his pillow, wondering why he didn't just use the bathroom earlier. Rubian watches Boyd leave, confused that his uncle, Leviathan, is also sitting on the sofa with a pillow. Leviathan claims he just likes the sofa, though Rubian questions why he would sleep there the entire night. Yawning, Leviathan dismisses the boy's questions about his sleeping arrangements, insisting that sleep simply poured over him. Rubian stands alone in his room, surrounded by question marks, completely baffled by the adult's strange and illogical behavior. Sunlight bathes the grand castle as a new day begins, accompanied by the bright, cheerful chirping of birds. In the grand hall, the silver-haired boy stands before a tall, gray-haired butler while a loud noise echoes. Rubian calls out to the butler, who politely responds while looking down at the small, silver-haired child. The butler explains that Zebert is currently reflecting on his actions while the old man desperately clutches a bust. Zebert groans in agony, sweating profusely as he realizes his mean behavior likely drove the poor child away. The butler praises Rubian's kindness, though the skeptical boy wonders if the old duke is going out today. Zebert suddenly crushes the stone pillar in a fit of emotional distress, startling the wide-eyed and terrified Rubian. A close-up of Zebert's face shows him blushing intensely as he roars with a mixture of shame and affection. Rubian notes that Zebert seems angry, watching as the old man stands amidst the smoking ruins of the pillar. The silver-haired boy gazes up with wide, sparkling eyes, wondering if this display of power is another test. Zebert frantically waves his hands, desperately trying to explain that his words were twisted and he isn't actually angry. Rubian clasps his hands together and beams a radiant, flowery smile, overjoyed to hear the old man's sudden apology.
Rubian happily clarifies that he was only surprised, asking the relieved Siebert if he truly doesn't hate him. Siebert scoops Rubian into a crushing hug, roaring about his cuteness while his scratchy beard tickles the boy.
Rubian winces as he is squished against Siebert's chest, noting that the old man's thick beard is very scratchy.
Siebert notes Rubian's cute outfit and chic hairpin, feeling embarrassed by the silver-haired child's unexpected charm.
Siebert looks down thoughtfully, seemingly moved by the realization that Rubian chose such adorable items.
Preparing to depart the grand hall, Siebert asks if the boy still feels uncomfortable riding in covered carriages.
The narrative highlights Siebert's intimidating reputation as a fierce warrior patrolling the monster-infested northern mountains. Villagers warmly greet the old duke, with a young girl eagerly showing off her practiced wooden sword skills. Enthusiastic local vendors offer Siebert fresh meat, clearly delighted to see their lord after a long absence.
Siebert becomes overwhelmed as generous townsfolk pile gifts upon him, much to the silver-haired boy's silent amusement.
Barking orders to a soldier, Siebert attempts to manage the influx of presents while being offered more flowers.
Fearing they will be stuck forever, Siebert scoops up Rubian and makes a hasty, comical escape.
Rubian blushes, fondly recalling how similar the local reception was when they first visited the land of Zelox. A bell rings as they arrive at a local tailor shop to find Rubian better-fitting clothes. Siebert explains they need ready-made attire immediately since the shop's madame won't return for several days. Mistaking the silver-haired boy for a girl, the tailor kindly asks what kind of clothes he prefers.
Rubian stares in shock as the women marvel at his delicate features and adorable trick accessory.
The tailors apologize for the confusion while the laughing Siebert teases the boy about his tiny stature. Rubian pouts and complains as the old duke playfully ruffles his hair, enjoying the boy's indignant reaction. Rubian breathes a sigh of relief, initially fearing his secret identity as a prince had somehow been discovered.
One of the tailors remains somewhat dazed, still struck by Rubian's exceptionally lovely and doll-like appearance.
Rubian beams with pure joy, twirling in an incredibly frilly green dress adorned with delicate ribbons and lace. Dressed in tropical vacation gear, a chibi Rubian enthusiastically welcomes everyone to a sightseeing tour of Zevert. A guide explains that the dangerous demonic beasts surrounding the estate actually fuel the northern economy. Chibi Rubian gleefully reveals that these monsters led to the creation of Zevert's two most famous local specialties. The first specialty is weapons, forged from unique minerals by skilled craftsmen drawn to the northern region.
Siebert leads Rubian into a bustling smithy, introducing him to the massive forge owner named Maddox.
Maddox smokes a pipe and wonders if Rubian is Siebert's late child, impressing the boy with his size. Siebert roars at Maddox to stop smoking near the child, prompting the large blacksmith to offer an apology.
To make amends, Maddox offers to let the silver-haired boy try his hand at the art of forging.
Siebert is outraged when Maddox suggests the small boy start by sorting through sharp leftover metal scraps.
Clinging to Rubian, Siebert demands Maddox stop talking and simply hand over the finished sword already.
The old duke stares intently at the forge, worrying that the environment is far too hazardous for Rubian. Rubian insists he is fine, privately thrilled that this situation is actually perfect for his secret magical goals.
Siebert sends Rubian off, sternly warning him to stay close to the knights and avoid strawberry milk strangers.
Left alone in the study, Siebert and Maddox argue over the specific materials used for a sword's grip.
Rubian greets the blue-haired Sir Leon, who firmly reminds the boy to address him as senior instead.
Leon walks away abruptly, leaving Rubian standing alone and momentarily bewildered by the knight's stern attitude.
Leon eventually pauses and asks where Rubian wants to go, prompting the boy to point toward his destination.
Using the map Boyd provided, Rubian leads Leon to a shop specialized in precious northern magic stones. Rubian presents Zevert's second specialty, high-quality magic stones that are famous for their beauty and low cost. An illustration explains how powerful demonic beasts are the source of higher-grade, more valuable magic stones. Once processed, these stones become powerful tools, shining with brilliant light and intricate jewelry designs.
Narrative panels detail how the Magic Kingdom profits by importing, processing, and reselling these northern stones. In the shop, Leon examines a glowing crystal, while Rubian looks on with intense, sparkling fascination.
Leon suggests lighter gemstones for wear, but Rubian insists he prefers the heavy, pale purple barrier stone. Holding this stone, Rubian realizes that only he knows the secrets required to activate its true barrier power. A map shows the Magic Kingdom's legendary thousand-year fortress, protected by a long-lost ancient magic barrier.
Rubian thanks Wizaria, confident that he possesses the ancient magic circles needed to create legendary tools.
Rubian joyfully plans to buy stones and protect Zelox, leaving Leon completely confused by his sudden outburst.
Zebert and Leon are struck by lightning-like shock as Rubian casually admits he possesses no money.
Fury erupts from Zebert as he realizes the silver-haired child has been left without any spending money. Leon's face contorts with anger, shocked that Rubian hasn't been given a proper allowance by his uncle.
Zebert and Leon demand Rubian speak up about his desires, insisting the boy tell them what he wants.
Leviathan makes a grand entrance into the shop, noting that his timing for the conversation is absolutely perfect.
The black-haired man scolds Zebert for withholding an allowance, assuming that is why the silver-haired child is sulking. In the middle of the magic stone shop, Chibi Rubian frantically waves his hands and denies he is sulking. Leaning down with a playful smirk, Leviathan watches as the small, silver-haired boy looks up at him with wide eyes. The black-haired uncle gently asks if there was something specific Rubian wanted among the various glowing magic stones. Rubian blushes and admits there is something, though he shyly claims it isn't something he needs right away. Sir Leon, Leviathan, and Zebert all lean in with intense, sparkling eyes, eager to buy anything the boy wants.
Rubian points toward a massive collection of glowing purple magic stones, leaving the adults completely stunned by the amount. Zebert decisively orders the owner to be brought forth, intending to buy the entire shop at a high price.
While workers change the shop sign, Rubian receives the deed, and Zebert plans a special strawberry-themed gift wrap. Rubian reflects on his sudden shop ownership, while Zebert worries that the boy's desires are actually far too modest.
Zebert offers to continue their tour, but a sudden, loud commotion from a nearby horse interrupts their peaceful walk.
Rubian gasps in terror as a massive horse charges directly toward him while he clutches his new shop deed. With lightning speed, the gray-haired Duke leaps forward and snatches the silver-haired boy out of the horse's path. Rubian beams with pure admiration, excitedly praising the old lord for his incredibly cool and heroic rescue. A heavy, impactful sound echoes through the air as the scene shifts toward a sudden and unexpected physical collapse.
Zebert falls heavily to the ground, gritting his teeth in agony while Rubian watches with a look of terror.
Villagers apologize for the bee-stung horse while a stern Leviathan warns them to be more careful with their animals.
Leviathan gently pats Rubian's head to comfort him, though the boy insists he is fine thanks to Zebert's intervention.
Rubian watches Zebert walk away, his expression turning somber as he senses the old man's hidden physical pain.
Walking through the village alone, Zebert curses his failing body for struggling with such a simple, heroic rescue. Surrounded by yellow roses, Rubian stares ahead with a worried expression, deeply concerned about the old lord's condition.
Back at the castle, the silver-haired boy crawls across the floor toward a mountain of colorful gift boxes.
Laying comfortably on his stomach, Rubian happily reflects on his productive day of sightseeing and acquiring magic stones. Hazel the maid opens a new package, surprised to find a collection of magic stones and fresh herbal plants.
A top-down view reveals the various green herbs Rubian purchased, which he plans to use for his secret project. Rubian explains that the plants are for the garden, expressing his excitement for the weather to finally warm up. The silver-haired boy worries about the high cost of the day, but Hazel assures him everything is perfectly fine. Gesturing toward the many gifts, Hazel notes that they will order even more clothes once the shop madame returns. In the castle's hallway, Hazel asks another maid to help her cut some fabric for a new task. Hazel brandishes a large dagger with a terrifyingly happy smile, leaving a trembling Rubian absolutely paralyzed with fear. As night falls, Siebert sits up in bed and stubbornly rejects the butler's offer of painkillers for his back. Siebert ignores his own pain, instead focused on whether Rubian's special treats and allowance pouch were handled correctly. Chibi Rubian gets stars in his eyes thinking about Jules, though he politely tries to decline the lavish gifts. Rubian struggles to drag a massive, heavy sack of goods across the floor while dreaming of buying more shops. The gray-haired butler begs the Duke to see a physician, but the gritting, stubborn Siebert refuses to show weakness. Fury erupts from Siebert as he roars for the butler to get out, hiding his vulnerability behind a mask. The butler retreats as Siebert laments his useless body and his inability to properly protect the small child. A fiery flashback reveals Siebert as the Mad Lion, a legendary warrior who once dominated the northern battlefields. Lightning flashes as the narrative details how war injuries shattered Siebert's pride and forced him into a bitter withdrawal. The butler walks through the grand hall, worrying about the Duke's rough temper and his deepening sense of isolation.
Rubian suddenly appears before the butler, looking incredibly adorable while holding a small brown paper package.
Rubian sneaks into Siebert's dark bedroom, finding the old man tossing and turning in a restless, painful sleep. Siebert wakes up and begins to snap at the intruder, but he is instantly silenced by a tiny shush. Holding his package tightly, Rubian tells the old lord to be quiet so they don't wake the sleeping butler. The butler watches from the doorway, chuckling at the idea that Siebert could ever hope to wake the boy. Rubian reveals several jars and rolls of bandages, surprising the butler who wonders what the boy is planning. Rubian explains he made a cooling ointment from his herbs, hoping it will help soothe the old lord's pain. Siebert recalls that Rubian's parents were healers as the silver-haired boy prepares to treat the old man's injured foot. Chibi Rubian admits to himself with a blush that he told a small lie to cover his tracks. The gray-haired butler asks Rubian how he knew about the Duke's injury while the boy tends the knee. Rubian explains he noticed the Duke dragging his leg and heard a different sound as his heel hit ground. A flashback shows the old lord staggering after the horse rescue, confirming Rubian's sharp observations about his hidden pain. The silver-haired boy realizes that if the Duke continues to endure the pain, it will only hurt him more. Touched by the child's empathy, the butler is moved to tears by Rubian's secret effort to make the ointment. Siebert feels a sudden heat in his knee while Chibi Rubian giggles, busy applying medicine and fresh bandages. The old Duke makes a funny, strained face as he tries to process both the warmth and the affection. Siebert's eyes squeeze shut, and a single tear escapes as he is overwhelmed by the boy's unexpected compassion. Narrative text details that the Duke only cried twice before, for his late wife and his stillborn granddaughter. A somber history describes how his failing body once prevented him from going to war for his despairing son. Rubian looks at the massive bandage with wide eyes, worrying that his healing effort is still not enough. The butler smiles warmly at the silver-haired boy, assuring him that he is already more than enough. As they leave the Duke to rest, Siebert lies trembling with emotion, grateful the third cry wasn't for sorrow. A majestic fortress island sits in the sea as white birds fly past with a loud, shrill quah. In a grand hall, a long-haired man on a throne laments the loss of his seventh child to followers. The silver-haired man clutches his head in despair, grieving for the child who left his embrace once again. He continued to sob into his hands, his long, pale hair veiling his face in a display of agony. He orders mages to be dispatched across the continent to track the child, regardless of age or gender. A hooded follower bows, vowing to reclaim the child for their master as the tracking order is given. The master smirks, revealing that Rubian is essential for summoning the great black mage once more.
Rubian appears with glowing red eyes, identified as the Grand Mage who inherited the legendary wisdom of Wizeria.
With a quick zing, Rubian's small hands focus intense magical energy to activate a glowing purple magic stone.
Rubian works tirelessly with a hup and a haya, activating an entire table of precious barrier stones. Wiping his brow, Rubian exhales a whew, frustrated by how long it takes to process each individual stone. A series of loud thud sounds at the door interrupts Rubian as he looks at his pile of stones. Rubian giggles, noting that Grandpa Zebert has made eating meals together a new and constant routine for them. At a lavish table, Zebert affectionately pats Rubian's head, while the black-haired Leviathan enjoys a cup of tea. Zebert pinches Rubian's cheek with an ow, making it impossible for the boy to eat his strawberry treats. Rubian runs away, threatening to leave if teased, while Zebert offers a bribe to check his knee condition. Frustration boils over as Rubian lets out a loud, adorable scream of "Wah!" in the middle of the room. Rubian reveals he used magic while applying the ointment, hiding his healing spell under the guise of medicine. Zebert fakes more pain to get attention, but Rubian demands his ointment back, tired of the constant teasing.
Leviathan scolds the Duke, insisting he use the proper title of grandfather and stop picking on the child.
The black-haired man lifts Rubian up, facing the old Duke who seems to be losing the playful argument. Leviathan firmly tells Zebert to stop pestering the boy since his injury has already been properly treated. Zebert points to his knee, claiming he only teases Rubian because he's adorable and the medicine works. Leviathan bans any more beard attacks while Zebert begs Rubian to finally call him grandfather once. A massive "what?" echoes as the old Duke is struck by the shock of Leviathan's stern orders. Zebert collapses to the floor, dramatically crying for his precious rascal, while Leviathan discusses the difficulty of adoption.
The Duke is horrified to learn that Rubian's stay might not be permanent, his face contorting with grief.
Leviathan reminds the Duke of his initial desire to kick the child out, which Zebert heatedly denies.
Zebert rants about how seeing the boy clears his frustration, while Leviathan remains entirely deadpan and unimpressed.
Zebert urges Leviathan to explain things to Rubian and Rose, insisting they never let the child go. With his hand outstretched, the gray-haired Duke screams "Never!" in a display of ultimate, stubborn refusal.
The Duke roars at the top of his lungs, his face flushed with the intensity of his obsession.
Rubian joyfully announces he is done, holding a tray filled with beautifully glowing, activated purple magic stones. Alone in his room, the silver-haired boy celebrates successfully completing his secret magical project in peace. Narrative panels show a maid working, Zebert designing weapons, Boyd training, and Leviathan busy with his duties. Silver-haired Rubian examines a purple magic stone, calculating how to use its power most efficiently. Imagining himself as a master chef, Rubian realizes that crafting magic stones into tools will significantly enhance their effects. Gazing through the gem, Rubian notes that his semi-permanent barrier will function without a constant mana supply. Rubian envisions a massive, impenetrable shield surrounding the fortress to detect and repel any unwanted intruders. Surrounded by activated stones, the boy settles into his chair to solve the complicated puzzle of their placement. Rubian concludes he must survey the area in person to find the perfect locations for his defensive barrier. He worries that his movements might look suspicious and lead the castle guards to detain him as a spy. A sudden, sharp sound at the door makes Rubian leap from his seat in a state of high alert.
Realizing his eyes are still glowing red from magic, Rubian panics as someone prepares to enter the room.
Leviathan enters the room and immediately notices the unusual red hue in the boy's eyes, prompting a direct question. As Leviathan's boots stomp toward him, Rubian fears his secret magical project has finally been discovered.
The black-haired man gently tilts Rubian's head up, his gaze intense as he searches the boy's face for answers.
Rubian lets out a nervous laugh, claiming he's stayed up late reading a fascinating book to hide his tracks.
Leviathan lifts the boy up by his shirt, playfully questioning whether his visit needs a formal reason.
A set of warm winter clothes suddenly appears, ready to protect the small boy from the biting cold. Bundled up like a tiny snowball, Rubian notices that Leviathan's quiet reaction seems oddly like he is sulking. Leviathan looks away with a slight pout, seemingly hurt by the boy's dismissive excuse for his tired eyes.
The pair walks across the snowy grounds, their footprints marking a path through the quiet winter landscape.
Bundled in his mint coat, Rubian runs ahead through the snow while brandishing a small stick like a sword. Leviathan watches with a stern but caring gaze, warning the boy to watch his step before he trips. When asked about his late-night studies, Rubian claims he was just enjoying various books borrowed from the library. Leviathan asks if there's anything else Ruby desires, prompting the boy to think of his next grand plan. With a look of pure determination, Rubian excitedly announces his desire to start taking swordsmanship lessons immediately.
Rubian explains he wants to grow strong like a true northern man, surprising the black-haired man with his ambition. Secretly, the boy plans to use his training as an excuse to scout locations for his magic barrier stones.
Rubian celebrates his cleverness, realizing that being a knight in training will give him total freedom to survey the walls. Leviathan agrees to find him a teacher, though he is amused by Rubian's sudden passion for learning and training. A somber thought crosses Leviathan's mind as he watches the boy, hoping this means Rubian plans to stay forever.
The silver-haired boy looks up with sparkling eyes, his adorable expression melting any lingering doubts.
Leviathan explains that Boyd is at a much higher level, suggesting Ruby needs a teacher of his own. A flashback shows young Boyd training vigorously, determined to take first place in the next academy term. Rubian suggests learning from the regular knights, but Leviathan warns that they won't go easy on their youngest member. Placing a hand on the boy's head, Leviathan tells him to be prepared for the intense attention of the knights. Rubian imagines a row of overly enthusiastic knights looming over him with dark, eager smiles and snacks. His imagination turns more terrifying as the smiling knights envision him as their new, perfect, tiny mascot. Trembling in the cold, Chibi Rubian feels completely overwhelmed by the thought of facing the intense gaze of the knights. Leviathan notes that it has been years since the Order had a new rookie, explaining their impending excitement. In his mind, Rubian sees the knights tossing him into the air with wild cheers for their new rookie. Panic strikes as the boy tries to cancel his request, but Leviathan insists a man must stand by his word. Leviathan smiles broadly while Rubian's face turns blue with dread, realizing he has accidentally signed up for chaos. The knights erupt in fiery excitement, having waited an eternity for a new member to join their ranks. The entire squad cheers with overwhelming energy, officially welcoming their youngest member to the training grounds. Dressed in a tiny, official uniform, Rubian stands before the knights who are ready to make him a legend. Vice Commander Oberon introduces himself, explaining the Order's strict merit-based rules and the lack of honorifics. Chibi Rubian stands at attention in his new blue and gold uniform, looking like the world's smallest soldier. Oberon finds the uniform adorable, but quickly shifts into instructor mode to begin the boy's basic training. Pointing to the massive courtyard, Oberon orders 2 laps, leaving the small boy wide-eyed with shock. To Rubian's relief, the instructor reveals a tiny, child-sized training circle for the special version of the laps.
Rubian scurries around the small circle with an adorable quick run while Oberon watches with his arms crossed. Oberon bellows for wooden sword swings next, but he holds up a tiny toothpick-sized blade to ensure safety. Rubian swings 2 tiny wooden swords with a determined hup, practicing his basic forms in the snowy courtyard.
Oberon orders a knight in a horse costume to provide the boy with essential horsemanship training.
A rhythmic clop echoes as Rubian rides atop the knight's back, while the red-haired instructor watches nearby.
Rubian looks back with a confused expression, wondering if this unorthodox method truly counts as real knight training. The surrounding knights laugh and eagerly wait their turn to play along with their adorable new youngest member. After training, Oberon promises a tour of the city walls tomorrow, sparking a shocked reaction from the boy. Rubian is overjoyed by the quick opportunity, while Oberon commends his enthusiastic attitude toward learning his new duties. The red-haired knight preaches about maintaining the order's dignity, though he silently questions the commander's own habits. Nearby, the black-haired commander Leviathan snoozes peacefully on the ground, completely ignoring his official duties and paperwork. Leviathan leads Rubian away, listening as the boy insists his playtime with the knights was actually rigorous training. Rubian asks why his uncle hasn't been in the office lately, curious about what secret work he's doing. The boy hops with excitement as Leviathan confirms tomorrow's wall tour, fulfilling a wish he's held for long. Leviathan stops and softly calls out to Ruby, catching the silver-haired boy's full attention during their quiet walk.
The black-haired man asks how long he's wanted to go, promising to grant any future requests immediately.
Rubian admits he worried about being a bother, revealing his habit of holding back his own desires.
Leviathan asks if he felt the same way back in Iosia, wondering about the boy's life before the castle. Rubian looks uncertain as Leviathan asks if he feared annoying his parents with simple requests in his past life. Clenching his fist, Rubian realizes his lies about Iosia are becoming harder to maintain as his memories shift. A hazy memory shows Rubian as a child, never daring to ask the tall Magus King for anything. Fragments of a strange, cold past flicker by, making Rubian feel as though his memories aren't truly his own. Pain flares through Rubian's head as he realizes someone has forcibly stitched these unfamiliar memories into his mind. Sensing the boy's distress, Leviathan immediately kneels and pulls Rubian into a protective, warm embrace in the snow.
The black-haired man apologizes deeply, blaming himself for making the boy recall such painful and difficult memories.
A soft sniff sounds as Rubian leans into the comfort, his face flushed from the emotional weight of the moment. Now in a yellow coat, Rubian explores the high walls with Zebert, who warns him to stay safe. Sparkling blue mana flows along the stone structures, indicating the complex magical defenses woven into the castle's perimeter. Rubian points toward a distant tower, asking his grandfather about the purpose of the many structures lining the wall. Zebert explains the massive golden bells serve as an emergency alarm for dangerous situations like sudden beast invasions. A clever smirk crosses Rubian's face as he internally celebrates finding the perfect location for his secret project. While Zebert looks on in confusion, Rubian calculates how to embed a barrier stone to protect the entire wall. The boy envisions a complex magical circuit, planning to automate the alarm system using his own vast mana supply. Zebert playfully lifts Ruben into the air, teasing him about how light he feels today with a hearty laugh. A frantic ding-ding interrupts them as a knight reports 40 magical grizzlies are launching a sudden, massive attack. Zebert is annoyed that beasts return so soon, while Rubian listens intently to the unfolding chaos of the report. The gray-haired Duke reassures the boy that these beasts are mere small fry and tells him not to worry. Zebert shifts into commander mode, ordering the defensive knights to deploy and a messenger to notify the main castle. Rubian is fascinated by the perfectly coordinated military response as Zebert prepares the archery unit to test new weapons. An orange-haired knight scrambles up from the floor,
adding to the high energy of the frantic, organized defense.
The group looks on in stunned silence as a new, unexpected update about the beast horde reaches them. In a snowy clearing, a mysterious cloaked figure stands silently amidst a pile of defeated, smoking magical beasts. The orange-haired knight trembles while delivering the report, explaining that someone suddenly appeared and wiped them all out. Zebert roars in disbelief that the mysterious savior vanished, while the terrified knight claims they only saw a shadow. The Duke rages at the knight's excuse, ordering him to eat eye-healthy food after failing to identify the helper.
Rubian giggles softly to himself, wondering why his first thought was that the mysterious person might be Khalid. A small, wide-eyed squirrel suddenly clings to Rubian's boot, letting out a series of tiny, high-pitched squeaks.
Rubian gently picks up the shivering creature, wondering if its home was destroyed during the recent magical beast chaos.
The boy cuddles the adorable squirrel against his cheek, delighting in the unexpected new friend he's found. In the background, Zebert rants about poor management, while Rubian joyfully offers to take the squirrel with him. Back inside, a maid brushes the boy's hair while mentioning how worried the Lord was during the attack.
Rubian reflects on the unpredictability of the beasts, noting they never give notice before they strike the castle. The brown-haired maid smiles kindly, reminding the silver-haired boy that it is only natural to feel worried. Surrounded by white blossoms, Rubian ponders the logistical challenge of embedding his barrier stone into the distant watchtower bell. As he envisions the golden bell and purple gem, the boy realizes this secret mission requires an accomplice.
The glowing purple stone signifies the complexity of the task, reinforcing Rubian's need for someone to act on his behalf.
Rubian sighs while resting his head, wishing for a loyal subordinate who can move through the shadows without being seen. A soft, rhythmic scratching sound suddenly draws the boy's attention toward the window in the quiet of the night.
The adorable squirrel from the earlier beast attack appears at the glass, much to the silver-haired boy's shock.
The tiny creature lets out a happy chirp, its sparkling blue eyes filled with excitement as it reunites with Rubian. Intrigued by the creature's behavior, Rubian follows the scurrying squirrel out into the snowy castle courtyard, under the moonlight. The boy reaches a frozen lake where a mysterious cloaked figure stands silently, flanked by an owl and wolves.
The squirrel leads Rubian toward the clearing, where the magical animals gather around their enigmatic and powerful dark-haired companion.
Rubian realizes Khalid was the mysterious savior on the walls, observing the boy standing among the massive, glowing-eyed wolves.
Wearing a gentle smile, Khalid settles the squirrel on his shoulder and formally greets Rubian as his master.